usually said, well, let's talk about, this topic, which is connected with, human women rights, but I'm not going to talk like a feminist, It's really like embarrassing thing to be a feminist and to say, I'm a feminist, or, feminism is something really, really embarrassing. Like, all the, it's something that people do not like to use as a word. But I know many feminists from France and from Paris, and they are different, as well as diplomacy, French diplomacy, because I'm really connected with the French embassy over here. And this is like really big steps and moves which are really important here in Croatia. And I think that we are really far away from France, unfortunately. That wasn't like that in the 80s, I think, but it was still really, 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 really conservative society. Yeah, okay. So the feminist fight in Croatia is really difficult.
Thank you. Can I say a word about being a man in feminism? Because it was kind of, I didn't expect myself to learn that much in the movie. And it was really interesting to see the young generation and the young men. We make a choice. We didn't put any men in the movie because it was not the moment, not the time. But actually, when I was the only man on the set, it was really interesting to learn that much about my behavior sometimes, like cutting women phrases or things like that, and how they think about the public spaces. I think it's really important to see movies about women in the streets doing things, because as you said, it was all about COVID and lockdown, and so they really want to do something about their hands and go on the streets. And in cinema, we don't see that often, young women in the streets doing things. And that was really a big thing in France, because this movement was like in every street of small towns and big towns in France. So everybody learned a lot, I think, in France, and especially men with this movement.
Yeah, well, the idea of collage was mostly to not stay inside the feminist audience, but speak to, in the street, in the daily life of people that are going from their home to their work, and to speak to maybe that women who are afraid to speak about themselves as feminists, who are afraid of what they are thinking or what are their places in the society, because the normal speech is to say, well, that's normal. Well, you have to raise your kid and you have to stay in the kitchen, or, well, that's a bit caricature, but that's mainly the thought of a lot of people. And we all, we instantly think that the strength of that movement is to be public, to be in the street and to speak to everyone, even the people that do not want to see that, reality, that world, and that numbers of femicide, who want to stay in their own bulle.
Sorry. One question for you, Simo, because Marie, you told us that you had already a kind of relationship with the feminism before you were, but as a man, what was your link, your relation with the feminism before the shooting of this movie?
I would not say that it was none at all, because when you are a young man in a big town like Paris, you speak a lot about ecology and feminism, and maybe the main topics of all conversation and debates. But it was really useful to be a man and a woman in this movie, because more than a man and a woman, a couple, because it was really an obsession, as you said. So we spoke about it like night and days, and every time about how can we act like if we are not there, because we were trying to do that. I was thinking a lot about men when I did the camera, because I thought, if I do frontal interview in face camera, And if we see young feminists speaking to the camera, saying you have to do that, you have to do this, men will not listen. So we try to not do any interviews. We try to be like, like hidden and try to have this cinematic look so that men could maybe have their own point of view of this movement. And actually, we never see them there in the streets, we just see collage. So we were trying to show who was hiding behind this collage. And we see that it's like your sister, your cousin, it's everybody. And we try to do a movie, like with a good light. Sometimes they are in a bar, having a beer, like normal people. And feminists are not witches. Witches doesn't exist. They are people fighting for their rights, and you have to listen to them. And it's really important to do a normal movie about feminism. And so yeah, I think that's why the main thing try to explain that witches doesn't exist in a way.
And I think also in some of the scenes you have seen, I think maybe if I was the only one filming and using the camera, I would have grabbed maybe a more intimate speeches, and we didn't want to steal anything from them. We didn't want them to say something that they wouldn't want to see in a big screen in cinema. That was really important to be really fair and to have their trust. And so I think having a man and a woman on the set was really important for that trust. Because when Simon was filming and when they were speaking in front of that camera, they knew that maybe men are going to see the film, and I think that was also important in the set. Thank you.
I would have a question related to the making of the movie, and especially maybe the obstacles that you met. I'm thinking about the scene where we see some men catcalling the girls actually from at the end. So where were you at that time?
Animal scene.
Animal scene, yeah. But where were you at that time? How did you hide, or did they see you, Simon, and did they maybe change their behavior according to that, or?
Yeah, it was actually really funny because we thought that having a camera maybe stop them, but not.
It's unexpected as well.
Stop the cop. Stop the cop. Yeah, but not the men. Yeah. It's funny how the camera sometimes doesn't act. They don't give a shit. They are here to say something to these girls, and it was important to show this scene because it's a small town. And it's not the same to go on a night session in Paris as in a small town. And I think it's every night they feel that the sound was really like, you heard some dogs and they are like, what are you doing? And it was really important to show that it's happening even with cameras. And I think they don't stop.
Yeah. Here is Nella, one of our activists, actually.
Hello. Hello. For the first time I saw this kind of collaging and pasting on the walls. It's very careful and non-violent way of activism, what I like. Actually, I wanted to add to Daniela that the organized feminist movement in Croatia started 45 years ago, in '78. And movement against violence against women started 35 years ago. We just celebrated 35. No, 35 years ago started the first helpline and then shelters. And so this is some, and I remember some ways of feminism consciousness raising, and this reminds me of this time of consciousness raising groups, but it's of course much more massive than in Yugoslavia. We also had one way of putting graffiti on the walls, but real graffiti, not this way. So where this idea really came from. I also wanted to say that I've noticed some American influence in French feminism, in terminology, and women don't speak about themselves only, but always mentioning gender minorities, which is a new trend, and cis using of this terminology. I see it as an American influence primarily. So my basic question is, where's this way of activism with collaging came from?
No. Well, I think what is really important in that movement is also that idea of primo-militantism. It's the first time for them, for all that women, it was their first way of enter in activism, doing the collage, because it's really easy. You just need black paint, paper, and glue, and a group of friends. But it's really, really easy, and it was for most of them the first step into militantism activism, feminist activism. And yeah, you're totally right. A lot of the inclusivity thought come from the gender studies from the United States, obviously. And the movement started in 2019 by a woman who started in Marseille doing collage to raise public awareness on the number of femicide. And in France, a woman died every 2 days, 2 or 3 days, depending on the year, because of their husband or ex-husband, murdered by their husband or ex-husband. And it starts like this. It starts by thinking about, well, we have to count, because it's not normal, and we have to count, and we have to make that counting public. And so she started, like this, putting every 2 or 3 nights the name of the woman who died from femicide and the number of the year, and it became viral because of thanks to social media. Yeah, and the simplicity, and so she was joined by a lot of young feminists like her, and now we are counting around 200 groups in whole France. So that's a lot.
Thank you very much. But now, how do you think that people would react in Croatia if such a movement would start?
I think it's good actually because we have also different forms of street activism. Also partly related to the war, because we had war violence, and we are very sensitive towards these discussions on non-violence. This part of the film was very interesting to me when they discussed about the violence and use of the song. I think that we were thinking about how to raise awareness also on femicide, how to, when every new woman is killed, how to make it visible in public. This is within the movement thinking. So I think that's a very good idea. Maybe we can use it. I also noticed that Rosignon was part of the movie, if I recognized her.
Rosignon, you know?
Yeah. She was our guest twice.
Okay.
Twice, one in person, one via Zoom. So she was the only one from the older generation who also participated. So her cooperation. How did you come to this cooperation as well?
Well, it was really interesting because she's one of the politics in France who really have interest in this movement, and actually she's a senator. How do you say senator? From Compiègne, and so she left our how do you say permanence, maybe local, the political local office to do the collage. And so she came on the set, and it was really interesting because it's different generations. And she said maybe we should have a wall for collage, and they say no, we don't want a wall, we want to put them where we want. And so it's really interesting to see how the different generation and activism react to this kind of proposal.
Yeah, totally. And what is also very interesting, I think, it's the fact that she's the only person we met that came from institution power, political authorities, that is linked, that have a relation with this group of collage. Because for most of them, all the local authorities don't have any relationship with them. So we thought that means a lot, and that's also very interesting.
You see that the police doesn't understand what's happening.
No.
and actually it was really important, sorry, but it was really interesting in the film. They don't get it, you know, like the police don't know what it is, so they say like hesitating, we have to go outside of the car and say something. And that's really interesting, like, because we know that there is a lot of problems when a woman go to a commissariat and try to denounce some violence. So yeah, there is a lack of communication between generations and men, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Building up on this intergenerational question, it was quite striking to see that the collage crowd was so young, and of course we see Ms. Režija as the only older person in the whole movie. I was wondering if the activists you were filming ever mentioned their families and how their action is welcome in their family circles. Of course we see the families of the victims, but that's slightly different. How is it welcome, and are they looking for support from older generations? Because also one quite striking scene is when the two activist groups, the conservative one, and then the feminists meet, and there is absolutely no form of dialogue possible. But on one side you see that people are really quite old, and it's very homogeneous, and on the other side, same, but on the opposite of the age spectrum.
Well, this specific scene is, obviously our favorite, because I think there was a lot of provocation in that group of people against abortion that decided at that time to stay in the middle of the street where the cortege of feminists were going to pass through. It was during March 8th of 2 years ago, 2021, and there is clearly a lack of communication and a non-understanding at all. I mean, it wasn't possible to speak between them. And what was your first? The families. Well, it depends. I think we cannot do a perfect sociology, or we can establish a stereotype of a young colleuse, a young feminist who are doing collage in France. But mostly they found a feminist family in their group of friends and in the people with whom they are doing an activism. But yeah, mostly the family is not aware, or is not okay, or there is no possibility of communication and of discussion, that's.
Since we did a movie, and especially when we went to the film Cannes Festival with the movie, some of the activists that were in the film could speak with their parents, because firstly the family didn't understand what it was, and now they can. So yeah, it's
actually
coming.
A lot of parents came at the
At
screening
the Cannes Festival.
and so
But it was not nothing. It was not a childhood activism.
Do they are connected to each other in different cities? Do they communicate together?
Not that much, actually. All groups are independent, but there is social media. So yeah, they can see phrases, you know, like when they like a phrase, a sentence, they use it again. But there is no national meeting. No.
And it's all about horizontality. I think you maybe understand it from the film, but that's also why we did a film that is choral. I mean, there is no hero. Because in the movement, it's all about horizontality, and the voice of someone who joined the movement 2 months ago is as valuable as someone who was there at the beginning of the movement. That the beauty, I think, of all the groups.
We have a question here.
Okay, following up on what you said a little earlier, I guess you did that kind of thing with a lot of people in France, so I was wondering what happened with the male audience when they are. Do you think that the women, they are heard?
Heard? What do you think? Heard, I think. Yeah, I think there is a lot of changing in France, and actually it was really important to keep a trace of these words, because sometimes we are not ready. You know, I'm thinking about Brest, when this woman told us about what happened with her ex-boyfriend, or in Le Havre, and so it was really important to keep a trace of these words. But actually, about the men, if the question was about the men and how did they react, it was really different, because sometimes we went to small towns of neighborhoods of Toulouse, for instance, with young men, and they were really angry about the movie, and actually said that you know, like abortion is bad and everything, but they are like 17 years old, and so sometimes we had really bad moments speaking with the young generation about the rights of the woman. And sometimes in bigger city there is some men, but there is not that much men in the audience who said that it's really important. No, I mean.
Yeah, well, I think maybe in comparison to Croatia, I think like people, men that are father of maybe young feminists, or I don't know, maybe a more deconstruit, how you say that in English? Deconstructed, I don't know. So maybe they are, thinking more about how patriarchal ideas infuses all the society. But mostly, people who are coming to see Riposte féministe au cinéma, I think they are ready to start the debate. So maybe that was why we didn't absolutely met people that are totally against feminism. But we try, and I think the film is also a tool to speak about this subject, and that's why we presented it a lot in high school, for instance. We did a lot of debate in high school, because I think that was really important.
And how did they react?
Well, it depends. It depends. Sometimes.
Most of them talk about it, actually, because they are saying, why they are shouting?
Yeah.
The women are shouting, and we are not.
Why they are angry?
Yeah, it's too much angry,
No
and the young generation sometimes are really scaring me and scaring us, because they don't think that abortion is really important. We had a bad experience sometimes, and I don't know. Men are really, they think that it's against them
Yeah.
in some ways.
And that was also very interesting in the high school presentation of the film, where the debates between the young women and the young men in the audience, that was really interesting, because I think at the end they were not they were not asking us to answer the question, but they were asking the other part of the audience, like it was a fight between them. So that helped maybe to to raise communication. I don't know.
Sorry, our English is really bad. No, please.
You answering, or I pose a question? Okay. Well, mainly I just wanted to thank you, Marie and Simon, for the film as well. Actually, I wanted to compliment you for this. It's so meticulously waste, you know, somehow in proportion. It's very peculiar. Tour de France, you show us the diversity of France to the unique rage of French women, and in a way it answered the question I had for myself. You know, you said horizontal, but your last festival is very vertical festival,
Yeah.
and your humble distributor is very vertical distributor. And I said, okay, what the heck? How come? How come that one dialogue, television, like documentary, drives this attention? Okay, topic, okay, I understand the topic. But what's in it? What's the secret ingredients? What the hell? Seemingly like I know a little bit more. Because there is something that basically struck me. This is this element of rage. Amount of wild, blunt violence that hanging in the air. And your movie is slightly scary movie, I'd say. It's a scary shit. Actually.
For men.
So, no, for anybody, because you see the society that really can go down in that moment. And you can see somehow it slipped in front of your camera.
I see hope.
The fact that the thing can go down any minute because everybody is ready to explode. These girls, they are full of anger and bitterness. Yeah. They give up the concepts. You know, in our training, the feminism is a point of view, it's a way of life, and also it's a kind of it's a structured thought. Let's do something for society, let's improve things. Only in the very beginning of your film somebody is shouting something against sexism and capitalism. Then we stay only with sexism, with one-to-one stuff. And on in cinematic terms, you really made it, because Simone is extremely able and gifted DOP, you know, because in this somehow, you were creating all the situations, but so often you had this, the most of the film, you have these ready-made situations, going very quick, and then Simone, who makes it so monumental, all at once, with this very stable, very almost conservative composition. So you're monumentalizing this hints of seconds that are passing by, and so you really make us observe. And what we observe is scary. And then we ask ourselves why we are scared. And that's what makes this exploration of yours, this research of yours, so important. This very important long métrage. Très long métrage.
Thank you very much. Thank you, my friend.
Rage, that's my question. Rage.
Yeah.
How do you feel this rage? How do you feel after you made this film? How long did it take for you to get back a decent, normal life, loving, simple life.
Yeah, totally. And again, thank you very much, my friend, because there is a lot in what you say, and we could maybe talk a lot about what you said maybe after. But about the violence, and actually when we choose the title, Riposte féministe, it's really violent, and that's somehow maybe why the Festival de Cannes and Wild Bunch International try to work with them, with us. It's like, because we had to do a movie that, I think the movie is really, it's not violent. We try to film it like really with a lot of care, but it was really important to show in cinema, in theaters, that this generation is able to do violence with feminism. It's not a great violence, it's just like putting some words in the streets, but they think about it, and that's really the difference with the older generation in feminism. And so, in France. And so, what you said at the beginning, the song with capitalism, it's an old song. It's a song from the 80s. And it's the only thing about the 80s. And now they are just about like trying to threaten the demands a little bit. And that's cool, that's really modern, I think.
That's also, I think, the idea of riposte. Riposte is to fight back. And you can fight back without any violence, and I think that's the discussion we talked about before on violence. We chose to, that's part of the discussion on violence, we chose to put in the film. It's, well, we women are experimenting a lot of violence in that society. Violence that can be physical, direct, that can be also economical, political, etc. And so to stop that system, we have to fight back. And so I think that violence is justified by the situation and the anger too. So that's what we try to show also, to put a bit of relativism.
It's really fun and it's really wonderful. And now this March, night march. Yeah. We have now this night march, and also the young generation of the feminists. They are also really loud, really rageful, and you have also, this tradition from the 90s, like you had Rage Against the Machine. Maybe Hrvatska didn't listen to that sort of the bands, or maybe he doesn't know, but this culture is really, like you have the whole Seattle thing. So this is the cultural stuff, and I think it's really great. But what I would like to ask is media reacting on your film? Because I think it's really good and it's really great, and I really love that you don't have this main character and protagonist that you are just shooting. And I love these conversations that you have. I think they are really, in sociological way, really important. Okay.
We were really surprised that the media loved it. So, yeah. Actually, we didn't expect that media from the far right left it. So we didn't know what to think.
Yeah. But I think that's important.
Left in the media, not that much.
Yeah, that was really, we didn't understand a lot. But yeah. But I think it's also important to add that we, even if we produced the film in France, it wasn't easy at all. We spent 1 year finding the funding. We experimented a lot of refus, of reject, and at the end, the institution who decided to finance the film was France 2, so France Télévisions, so service public. So yeah, that's it très bien, and that was also very important for us because that means, well, it's public interest, and we were really moved by
educational content.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question that might be the last one.
And this is if your throats and mouths are now dry after all this talking.
Totally.
We might continue with a glass of water and wine outside in our freshly painted upper floor gallery, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Merci.